Yes. No.
Who knows?
Did you cut down your hours for September? Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening, everyone. We'll call to order the September 7th Select Board meeting to order. There's no changes to the agenda, just two additional announcements that Erica and some people will go over. And then if there's anybody here who's really excited to the HCC appeal at the very end, that's going to be continued to December 7th. So just in case anybody's online and attendees are here for that, that's continuing December 7th. But we'll get to that. We'll move it when we get there. And I think that's it. Erica, you got announcements?
Sure.
Thank you.
The select board meeting is being audio and video recorded, and we are going to, or I am going to review the applications for appointments. The first one is the short-term rental work group. And just give me 1 second. I'm going to put it on the screen so people at home can see as well. So this week and next, we're going to be announcing the candidates' names pursuant to our protocol. Their applications are in the packet for the public to review. And then the appointments for the 3 at-large seats and the 1 alternate will be appointed on the 21st of September. So sorry, too many things. So we have some additional names. Unfortunately, I was out of the office for a couple of weeks, and some applications had come through to my email and they didn't get forwarded to other people in town admin. So those names are in red. But we have Kathy Baird, who Nantucket Together put forth as a candidate, as a representative for that group. Curtis Barnes, Gary Beller, who would be a representative of the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers. Sue Brandt, Abby Camp, Wendy Conway Schmidt, Ernie Culkins, Jonathan Delano, Thomas Dixon, and I didn't note this because I just found this out, but he would be an affordable housing advocate for that representative. Rebecca Duhame, Jerry Ferguson, Lynn Filipsky, William Gardner, and that would be for the ACNVT, Keith Goldstein, Carol Greenberg, JP Hernandez, Peter Hoey, Peter Kahn, and that would also be for the Advisory Committee of Non-Voting Taxpayers, John Kitchener, Robert Levy, Andy Lowell, Bruce Mandel, Edward Mills, Henry Mueller, Leo Mullen, Chip Newton, Robin Nides, and she would be from Nantucket Together, Jeffrey Parker, Matthew Peel, Sam Pierpont, Joe Plandowski, Sharon Quigley, Georgia Raisman, Grant Sanders, Damian Schabel for Nantucket Together, Eric Silfen, Jim Sulzer, Catherine Ward, Linda Williams, Patsy Wright, and Karen Zageko. I'm hoping I got that right.
Robin Nines is a he. Robin Nides, NYD.
Okay.
That's a he. Yeah.
Did I? Okay.
Thank you for saying that, Matt, because I thought I had it wrong the whole time. When Erica said.
Oh, did I say he? Sorry.
You said she.
It's just a she. It's a he.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right.
Thank you for correcting me. And then we have what we're calling our round 3 committee vacancies. We've done really, really well in terms of filling any vacancies that are on our committee appointments, better than we have in years. We still have 3 committees that need seats filled. One is the Agricultural Commission. There's still 2 seats available, 0 applicants. The good news is that there at least is now a quorum with the 2 people that were appointed on the 17th, so they can start meeting once everybody's sworn in. For the Finance Committee, we have 1 seat available with a term that ends 2024, and we have 3 applicants: Jeremy Bloomer, who was in round 2, Walter Flaherty, and Joseph Wright, who was also in round 2. And then for the Tree Advisory Committee, again, we have 2 seats available, no applicants, but we do have 3, so we've got a quorum that committee can meet. But if anybody's interested in applying for either the Agricultural Commission or the Tree Advisory Committee, just submit your application to me. We've got applications online. And that is that, and they are following the same committee appointment schedule as the short-term rental work group, with announcing their names tonight and next week, with appointments to be made on the 21st. We have an additional announcement about the 3rd sewer force main project, and the sewer director, David Gray, is going to be making that.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Just to bring up that the sewer force main project is supposed to resume on South Shore Road on September 12th, and it's also going to be starting down in the town area. However, we still have some finalizations to do with the plans, some concerns for some residents. So what we're planning on doing is pushing out a lot of the heavy construction, probably till the 26th. The first couple of weeks are probably going to be a lot of light stuff. We have to take and remove a lot of sidewalks and curbing. Everything has to be documented and cataloged, so we know exactly where it came from and where it's got to go back. So there'll be quite a bit of light work going on for the first couple of weeks. We're doing some staging down at Jetty's Beach parking lot, the upper lot, with gravel and structures and everything. That's started today. Gravel barges are going to be starting to come the first of the week. We have at least 35 barges of gravel coming as of right now, just because the force main is being completely encased in gravel by a couple of feet, so that if someone ever is digging and they come to gravel, they know something's up. So there's a lot of there's some concerns with some residents on closeness of foundations and everything that we're looking at. Today they installed 2 vibration sensors. They're in little black Pelican cases with little solar panels on them, and they're going to be throughout the project area. There's 2 right now up on Step Lane. So if someone happens to see them or get a call that they look suspicious, they're actually sensors for any kind of vibration. So during construction, they'll be able to monitor anything, and they automatically send out alerts, and it'll trigger alarms if something's going on. So it's going to be a tough project, but we're ready to go. And there'll be a lot of questions, and we've been meeting with a lot of residents. We're going to have some public outreach stuff here coming up again shortly. We've already sent some mailings out and some handouts, and we're going to be having a couple of public meetings and to get more and more word out, but it'll be challenging. But we'll get through it. So I don't know if anyone has any questions, but.
And did you say this? South Shore Road is going to start on the 12th?
Yeah, the South Shore Road construction on the gravity and the force main are going to start on the 12th. The real heavy duty excavation work. We won't be doing any of the heavy excavation work in town yet until we finalize some of the plans and possibly moving some of the lines, just because the roads are so skinny right at the top of Step Lane and then down on Lily Street. So there's still some in the field planning to do, but we're working through it. So,
Thank you, David.
right.
And a lot of that South Shore Road work is a continuation of the work that we were doing in the spring. So, we have another additional announcement. Our finance director, Brian Turbett, is going to make an announcement.
Thank you, Erica. Good evening, members of the board. So I just wanted to take 1 minute to let everybody know that we have hired a new assistant finance director focusing on capital to assume the position that Rick Sears left to become the new assistant town manager. So tonight we have with us Susan Carmel, who's the new assistant finance director. So
Welcome, Susan. You can come up if you want.
Hi, I'm very excited to be here. I just started my first week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Aboard. Are there any select board announcements or comments at this time?
I just want to remind everyone that the housing workshop that was held earlier this month is available to be viewed on YouTube, on the town's YouTube page. There's a lot of comprehensive information about the state of housing on Nantucket and where we're headed, and it's a valuable watch. I've actually had a number of community members approach me to say that they were unable to attend and have been able to watch it and found it very interesting. So I encourage everyone to take the time to find and watch that. Lots of good stuff happening.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Erica. No follow-up comments from prior select board meetings. Is there any public comment here on items that are not on the agenda? Denise?
Yes, please. Hello, Denise Cronow. I'm speaking tonight not as the chair of the Finance Committee, but as myself. In a minute, as soon as I get my glasses. So I thought long and hard about whether I should step up to the microphone at today's meeting, but then I asked myself, when did the zeal for personal attacks by a few, cloaked in a democratic process, the recall of Jason Bridges, start outweighing our community's need for decency and togetherness? I stand here tonight in full support of Jason and the rest of the select board and all our elected officials who dedicate their time to enriching our community, time they could spend with their families or frankly in any other way than in service to Nantucket. I wanted to illustrate my support with numbers because numbers tell a story. So let's talk about numbers and let's start with the select board. The select board meets more than 50 times a year between regular meetings, committee assignments, and executive sessions. Assuming a conservative 2 hours per meeting, that's 100 hours. The packet can often be over 100 pages. Assuming at least 5 hours of preparation per meeting, we have another 250 hours. Community outreach, phone calls, answering emails, and at least another 5 hours per week, 250 hours. In total, 600 hours or 15 40-hour weeks. Said another way, 30% of their year is dedicated to this community. In Jason's specific case, that adds up to over 3,000 hours or 75 weeks for his 5 years of service. Said another way, in the last 5 years, he's dedicated 1.5 years of his life to this community. Now let's talk about the numbers of the proposed recall. There has to be 200 signatures of verified voters to get the affidavit approved. And once the affidavit is approved, there's a 21-day deadline to get the 1,880 recall petitions requested from the town clerk, filled out by voters, and submitted to the town clerk's office for verification. The recall numbers are interesting until one realizes that their impact is effectively pointless. Even if all the steps are successful, 200 signatures, that's easy. 1,880 recall petitions by verified voters, not so easy, but never underestimate determined people. A successful recall election, also probably not so easy, but maybe achievable. And when all of this is done, Jason is removed from office at an election he's not even running in. Would anyone suggest this is a sensible investment of anyone's time? Hasn't the point been made by starting the recall? I realize that my comments tonight will have little impact. I expect that people's entrenched positions will stay exactly that, entrenched. I thought about this as I plan to speak in support of Jason and the select board. If I won't change anyone's mind, why speak? I'm speaking because it's disheartening to see the polarization that has arisen over the last months, and I believe it does a disservice to our community, whose hallmark has always been caring, understanding, and support for each other. I also believe that if we continue this trajectory of divisiveness, talented, dedicated people will not commit to public service, and we will all lose as a community. My ask is really simple. Let's work together the best we can, starting from a position of mutual respect and support for each other, even when we differ. We are a community that can build up without tearing down first. Thank you.
Thank you, Denise. Is there any other public comment?
Good Good evening. Thank you for letting me speak. My name is Ann Duez. You're holding a closed executive session tomorrow afternoon. Agenda item number 5 is a discussion about appealing the recent land court decision requiring Nantucket to modify the definition of hot tub spa so that it is consistent with the definition of swimming pool residential in the Nantucket zoning code. My fellow petitioners and I wrote you and the members of the planning board a week ago yesterday before their closed executive session meeting to discuss the land court decision. You may not have had time to read our letter, so I will repeat the very simple question we asked in our letter. Why? Why would you appeal a decision that would take us back to a contradiction in the zoning code? If, as has been suggested a bit, there may be a few inconvenient outcomes as a result of correcting the zoning code, why not deal with them publicly through the normal course of amending the zoning code at town meeting or via the ZBA? Thank you.
Thank you, Ann. Charity?
Good evening. Quite a few people were concerned, I think.
Jared, can you just say your name?
Oh, Charity Benz. Reading in the Inquirer and Mirror earlier this week, and I'm just going to read this for you. SBF, this has to do with the Wisconsin thing. I happen to live in the unfashionable Mid-Island areas, and I don't go to the beach. I don't have much of an issue with what's going on out there, but I do have an issue with one thing that was said. SBPF President Josh Posner said they have not decided if they will appeal the decision. It's another one, I guess, on your agenda tomorrow. Quote, "We will discuss this with our partners in the town and select board regarding next steps," quote, he said. And the word partners raised quite a few eyebrows and not a few concerns about what exactly is the relationship between the select board and this, what is it, Sconset Beach Preservation Fund. Any other word could have been used, but partner seems to suggest some kind of an association or something like that. And I think if that is the case, or if it's not the case, it might be good to have Mr. Posner come up with a better word.
Thank you, Charity. Butch?
How you doing? I'm Butch Ramus. I'm acting, well, I'm not acting. I'm the assistant plumbing inspector, and with the plumbing inspector, Doug Bennett, we've been trying to stop the overuse of antifreeze. Some plumbers have been using it into pumping it into the water piping, and we're talking thousands of gallons every season they pump in, and then in the spring they pump it back out into the sewer department or the septic tanks and stuff. And we finally got a ruling, but between COVID and everything else in the past few years, we haven't been able to get to it. But we had a ruling through the state investigator that it's in our code that you cannot put something into the portable water system that might change the taste, color, or the odor. And this does that. And it takes thousands of gallons to flush it out after they've pumped it into the system. And we've just been going around, and Ty Fortner and Mark Willett and Paul Murphy and Fred Lima of the investigators been helping us, and finally that ruling. So if a plumber wants to use it, he would have to go in front of the state board. And all I'm trying to do is get it out to the public to please try to get these plumbers to stop using it. It's only a few of them, but we feel that extra 4,000 or 5,000 gallons of antifreeze dumped into our system every year is not good for the environment. And I had a couple of flyers there that saying it's not good. And, you know, back in the day when we used to put fires out with foam and walking through the stuff, how great it was. Now we see 25 years later, a lot of people I know are walking around with cancer and stuff. Not saying this will do it, but not saying it won't. So we're just trying to get the word out to everybody.
Thank you, Butch. Good, Megan. We have one hand up on the online. Go ahead, Megan. No, go ahead.
A little bit of arts and crafts. Megan Perry. I asked 3 weeks ago if anybody had read the proposed decision with HAC. Only Matt had, so I made the presumption that probably this board also hasn't read some of the testimonies and some of the important factors with it. So I printed out some. I know you guys are very busy, so I also highlighted some of the pertinent information, so you don't have to read thousands and thousands of pages. So here's a copy for everybody. I'll try to kind of take you through it quickly. I know you're busy and I don't want to take up too much time. The first page is from the proposed decision from HAC, from the presiding officer. It's not been a final decision yet, and I know that you guys are discussing Surfside Crossing tomorrow in your executive session, so maybe something to look into. The page that I would like to reference is page 29. It deals with fire safety. You then flip to page 31. I've highlighted, I just drew a line so I didn't have to draw through all of it. The concerns of both Chief Murphy and Bruce Perry are no longer speculative, as the presiding officer says. We had a real live fire. The Veranda House shows us this can happen. So I think that we need to ask HAC to reopen the hearing with new evidence, because we have it. So that's the first page. The next sheet you'll find, this is data provided by Attorney Haverty for Surfside Crossing. It's the square footage for all of the buildings, all 19 of them in this development. It's the burnable square footage. It's not the bedroom square footage, because some of these ceilings are quite high and those are still burnable. If you look at it by comparison, they're all about the same, if not larger, to the Veranda House. So sometimes visuals are good. You can say, oh, look, 19 Veranda houses on fire, or 2 Veranda houses on fire. And the square footage is about, for Veranda House, if you do not include the porch, is 8,100 square feet. Go through the sheet, you can see the square footage for all of these buildings, including the community building, the mechanical rooms, stuff like that. Next sheet is a letter from the fire chief. In this, he estimates that this development places an overwhelming responsibility on the fire department if emergency was to arise. The potential fire load of one empty apartment building would require 5,200 gallons of water a minute to extinguish, an impossible mark to meet from the start. So if by simple math, you take 5,200 gallons per minute, that's 312,000 gallons per hour. The Veranda House required about 850,000 gallons of water to extinguish. So we're talking about 312,000 for an hour to extinguish, and we're not sure if we can meet that mark. Again, in the review of the comprehensive permit for Surfside Crossing, that comes up again. The 5,200 gallons per minute, an impossible mark to meet. If you look at the highlighted part down on page 6. If you go to the comprehensive hearing permit requested waivers, flip through and you go to page 2, they're asking for waivers to allow for structure height to exceed 30 feet, more burnable space. So just something to take into consideration. I think the Veranda House was about that size. We don't know how much more than 30 feet, just 30 feet, could be 60 feet, who knows? Next page on there, this is a pre-filed testimony. Page 2 cites the credentials. This is a National Wildfire Coordinating Group, certified coordinating group, prescribed burn boss. and a bunch of other certifications in here. Credentials shows why this person would be able to provide testimony. How many prescribed fires they've had, how many they've dealt with, how many incidents they've dealt with. One of the concerns in here after reading the pre-filed testimony from the fire consultant for Surfside Crossing is the water line serves other large-scale users like the school, the hospital, et cetera. So if there's a concurrent incident, so 2 veranda houses on fire, or the Woodbury, I think it was Woodbury Lane explosion and veranda house all at the same time, what are we going to do? Are we going to have water? Are we going to have the infrastructure to get it there? Are we going to have the firefighters? Are we going to send in 2 guys to one fire, 2 guys to another? Do we have the tankers? We don't actually know. Another concern is the wind on island. And if you look at the very back of your page, I did have a little chart showing some of the development, 2 fires at the very beginning. These 2 buildings, right? This is the only entrance in, only exit. These are fire trucks. Nobody can get in or out. Down here shows the wind. Let's say it's January. The average wind is about 20 miles per hour. How quickly is it going to spread to other buildings? Maybe to this one. Maybe there's somebody back here having a heart attack that needs a first responder, but they can't get in. There's no way in or out. Just something to consider. So that was brought up. Another thing is that high density developments, the fires run a little bit more hot. They're harder to put out. South Shore Road is basically a dead end street. Again, look at the picture. They can't get in or out. And then the developers are proposing using Sherburne Commons. So run down the street here, go through Sherburne Commons all the way to the back. This is the exit. It's kind of a deer path. They're proposing 283 bedrooms in here. That's not people, that's bedrooms, right? In addition to all of Sherburne Commons and all of South Shore Road. And our deer path is our second egress. It just doesn't seem like a safe idea. If you look at 42, can we get the water there? We have lots of water in the aquifer, sure. Do we have the infrastructure to get it there? Don't know. More pre-filed testimony. This one backs up the fire chief's concerns. And you can read through them, but basically, due to staffing limitations, the fire department relies on aerial ladders. I don't know that we can get them in. Setbacks of the projects, all sorts of, if you read through it, it's all highlighted for you. But you can understand why if we had a couple of veranda houses on fire in this one development, it was a miracle that veranda didn't have worse of an impact on our community. So I think we need to learn from that. If nothing else, learn from what happened. The vegetation around that area is super combustible and volatile. And again, if the wind picks up, we're in trouble. The fire chief says this creates a serious public safety concern. A little bit more on the fire chief's qualifications on the front. I think we all know how qualified he is. One thing that I thought was quite interesting, page 6 of the fire chief's testimony. These concerns, and you can go through and see the highlights of all he had. These concerns were outlined in our comment letter to Mr. Feely and Bracken Engineering, but were not addressed. So who's liable? We know these concerns are here. We know these risks are here, and we're going to keep on going forward with it. Who is liable if something happens to a firefighter, to a resident, to somebody else who can't get out of that development? And then let's see, these are just more, this is the picture that I just showed you guys with the wind and the exits. So I'm wondering if, since this is on your executive session for tomorrow, if it's something that you guys could bring up to town council and ask them to have the hearing reopened and new evidence submitted, since we no longer have it as speculative. This is actually something that could happen. And unless we start to make impactful change, we're just putting more people at risk, and we don't need to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. Eric, can we go to, sorry? We go to Diane Coombs. And public comment is for things that are not on the agenda. Hi, Diane, go ahead. We can hear you.
Can you, I'm not sure what with your remark about about our thing on the sign committee, advisory committee is being postponed until you said in December 7th?
Oh, no, that was the HTC appeal, the public hearing for that.
Oh, okay.
At the very end, not right before that, select board reports and comments were going over the historic district commission advisory committees.
Okay, well, I am here. I don't know whether Ray is there or not, because this is the first time I've used this webinar, and
Ray's not here. We should get to it pretty quick. We have a pretty light agenda, so we'll
Okay,
get to
well,
it pretty fast.
wouldn't it be better if I wait until that comes up to talk to you?
Yes, it would.
Okay, I would do that. All right.
Okay, thanks, Diane.
Thanks
We'll
a
get
lot.
back to you. Any other public comment here tonight that's not on the agenda? Okay. So no new business that I know of. Oh. Get lost in public contracts. Okay, can I get approval of the minutes for August 17th, approval of payroll warrants and treasury warrants? Okay, so let's just do the minutes and the payroll warrants. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that passes 4-0. Now approval of treasury warrants for August 24th, August 31st, and September 7th.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, that passes 3-0 with one recusal. Approval of pending contracts. Is there any comments or questions from anyone here? Eric, is there anything you want us to know?
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And Erica, just we keep an eye on to see if Melissa pops on. She might come on tonight, because then we'll have to go to roll call. Forgot to mention that. Okay, Citizen Empowerment Committee request, Natural Resources and Salt Marsh Center request for acceptance of gifts.
Motion to accept and write letters of thanks.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes. Usually I try to read those out loud, the gifts, but I can't seem to find it.
Do you want to still? Do
Yes.
you want me to?
Yeah, can you?
Just so everybody knows, the gifts totaling $475 for the Salt Marsh Center were just accepted. And they were gifts from Thomas and Kathleen Cahill, Margaret Saglambine, Debbie and Jeff Nicholson, Betty and Matthew Gilson, Judith Selleck, Deborah Spear, Richard and Nancy Lawrence, Mary Kate Heron, and Janet Dye. And then there was, for the Natural Resources Department, a gift of $450 from the Great Harbor Yacht Club Foundation for the Shellfish Hatchery.
Thank you, Erica. I think it's really nice to read out who gave the gifts and how much. Okay, select board reports and comments, discussion, potential action regarding Historic District Commission advisory committees. See, Diane, that was pretty fast. That was about 3 minutes. So we this is pretty much our last agenda item outside of committee reports. So we have as much time as we need to really to dig into this. Does anybody from staff want to start at all? Just want to. Okay. So I think we most of us here have read town council's first take on this, and then some other that have come in. Everything was in your packet except a letter from the HCC chair, Ray Pohl, which was sent to the select board this morning. I don't know if everyone got that, the select board members. Okay.
I have not seen it.
Okay.
I didn't get it.
Oh,
Thank you.
oh, there you go. Thank you, Erica. So the way I'm looking at this is I think we might have to do a little bit of how we got here, but I really want to focus on where do we go from here, and how do we get, at least for me as the chair of the select board, and select board members, you can disagree or agree of how to get these committees, advisory councils, committees back up and running. And there might be some that we can discuss. I think overall this is a longer discussion. I think it'll probably be in phases, where we might decide tonight to reinstate one or more of the committees. We might decide to table it. We might decide to do a couple of things. So I think we should have a good conversation on that tonight. I will be allowing public to speak, and if staff would like to speak as well. So there's a lot of different places that we could start on this. Do you want to start with the options that were laid out? Do you want to make some general comments,
Well,
Matt?
I'll make a general comment. I think the first thing is understanding why this even happened and how. Because, I think that good government wouldn't, I just look at this, I think it was something that, didn't need to happen the way it did. The people that were impacted weren't even asked and weren't even consulted. We're only getting a letter today from the people that this most impacts. And I think that, we couldn't do it. Any one of us couldn't do this unilaterally. This was just done, the process was not sufficient. And so to gloss over that aspect of it right from the start, I think is a mistake, because we'll just repeat it. And I feel, so that's number one. I feel as though we, how do I say it? I don't think it should be vested in the select board. I don't think we should be picking those committees. I think that it was working fine the way it was, in my opinion. And so I don't understand why, and if it had to change, we should have had, notice on, here's the issues, this is why it has to change. I didn't see any of that. And everyone was blindsided by this. It came out on a Wednesday.
Mhm.
And so I think that should be the first thing that staff should be coming to us with, saying, not within the legal, I think the legal opinion stuff, it was looking for instead of doing it from a process, we use the legal as, legal says we have to do this. Well, how come we didn't have to do all the other right things? How come we didn't have to ask the people who were impacted? How come we didn't have to hold public hearings about it? How come we change regulations by sort of decree? It doesn't make sense to me. So I would like to understand that part first. Maybe there's a really valid reason to do it, but the way it was presented to us and explained, I don't think convinced me from the beginning, and I still don't believe it. And I don't think it's just housekeeping. So.
Do you think any explanation do you want that, or because you just said it's not going to help you?
No,
So-
I said, I think that's, that would be step one. Like, if this, anyway, this is not, I don't see it as, I think how it happened, I think, is an issue. If we're supposed to be the policy setting board, and if the HDC is set up to do what they're doing and has, they've set up regulations, they have the right to do some of those things, they weren't even consulted. And so I think so I've looked at all the, I've looked at a lot of the documents, I've gone through a lot of it, I understand a lot of it pretty well, and I just think it was not done particularly well. And I think that, that would be my first question, is why did we do it when we did it, and how, and I think we had to be careful undoing it to make it worse. Sort of, if we don't understand why we did it in the first place, if we try to undo it and put the burden on us or take things away that shouldn't be taken away, why are we doing it? And I've talked to different people from both sides of this. I know what people think why they want it on both sides, but it hasn't been sort of spoken. So
I think we can decide to put it all back together exactly how it was before if we want. There might be a time, there might be some constraints, but over time, I think we can decide to do that. I agree. I talked to the HCC chair today, and I said, nobody, I don't think on the select board wants to own this, right? We want to keep this within the HCC and planning and have them decide. But looking, legally, maybe we can, in a short-term phase, get it back up and running, and then we can decide with the home rule petition and dig in all that. Brooke or Don, do you have any comments on the why part, like how we got here? Go ahead.
I don't really want to speak to the reasons, since it wasn't initiated by me, but we've had a couple of conversations with council. I served on the HDC for a long time. I kind of wanted to talk about the solutions.
Mhm.
I think that the sign advisory being like a subcommittee of the HTC, like how we've talked about having a licensing board, is a positive thing. I think it's very focused, and has its own guidebook. I think that when the Historic Structures Advisory was established, there was no historical commission, and if the historical commission has the bandwidth to do it, I think that would be a really appropriate group to be reviewing historic structures. And then in terms of the neighborhoods, I think that there may be a better way to be more inclusive of more neighborhoods where they get a blast of the agenda and can get a group together that may or may not be concerned about things to make comments. There was often, in my experience for a number of years, there was trouble getting quorums at times, especially in the middle of the winter on some of the advisories. But I would say that that they are valuable. The HDC is really bogged down, and it's nice to have perspective from some people who are more focused. But again, on the neighborhood situation, I think that's something more broad that doesn't necessarily require town staff to be managing, putting the meetings together and taking minutes and that kind of thing, where any neighborhood, like I know ones with HOAs do this already, like Woodbury Lane has an HOA that has to review any design. And I believe Nosshop does too. But so those are just some initial thoughts. And it appears that the way it was originally set up just wasn't exactly legal. And there are solutions with us being the appointing authority, but I'd like to, if we are going to do that or do a charter change, I would want it to have some recommendations from the HTC board, kind of like how we have done. So we've taken, when an alternate resigned, I think we took advice on the appointment.
So I don't have a lot of understanding of the history of, particularly with the neighborhood advisories, how they got established, what was the driving force behind. I mean, I can imagine why there are unique neighborhoods that have unique needs and or appearance. So I need more time to understand what are the origins of some of these. I have had personal experience with the Sign Advisory Council, and it was a valuable process when I went through it on behalf of an organization that I'm involved with, the Congregational Church. So they were very helpful and gave us, the applicant, a lot of information about the history of signs and why and the decisions they make, and it was super helpful. I have heard that there have been, I know of historically some situations where there's been back and forth between an advisory council and the HDC, and it's been confusing for an applicant. So knowing what the role is and what the expectations and clearing that up to avoid that situation might be valuable. So, and as to how we got here, I don't know what the precipitating events were, whether it was there were people who were resistant to the opinions of the Sign Advisory Council, and therefore we were potentially subject to litigation, and so there was an investigation of the legality of their setup. But regardless, once you know something isn't legal, you cannot continue to operate it, because to my mind, that subjects us to having those decisions questioned legally in the future. So I do think that the most necessary one in my mind is the Sign Advisory Council, and I would love to reconstruct that as quickly and efficiently as possible. And then in the meantime, determine whether amending the HDC charter to clarify the relationship so that we do a temporary fix while we figure out a long-term fix to do what everyone believes should be, that these should fall under the HDC and be advisory too, and have that really clear, what the roles and responsibilities are, who the ultimate authority is, and And it's pretty hard to ask neighborhoods to put people together to, advise on design. It's hard to convene people. So having standing committees has value. I would like to offer other neighborhoods, if they have an interest in having an advisory for their neighborhood, that we think of it in holistically for the whole island when we reconstitute those. So those are sort of my preliminary reactions to it.
Thank you.
In many words.
Yeah,
Matt.
my suggestion initially, when this first happened, to Libby and to Jason, I couldn't talk to anyone else, was to just put it back in a day or two. If the Plus department can, stop it in a day, Libby as the boss can put it back the next day, and then spend the time to do the analysis to know what it is that we're solving for. Is it a management issue that we need to manage it differently? Is there actually no need for some of these committees? Have the people who are impacted be informed, help inform the decision. And this, when I read through the various emails on this, some of this was discussed a year ago. This didn't just happen. This was on the docket, and then something decided it was time to do it. And so, I think that's, I think if it was started a year ago, there was plenty of time to have the impacted parties be involved with discussing the solutions. What you do if you're trying to decide, hey, do we want to have an HDC? Do we want to do this? You put together a committee of 7 or 9 people, and it's the planning board and the Builders Association, the historical commission, whatever. And they go out and they decide what they want to do for the town. We've had it long enough, and there are changes we've talked about for 20 years that we haven't, that we sort of keep talking about. The HDC is overwhelmed. They don't, should we split it up into 2? Should we be doing something else? Those have been discussed but never done. Maybe we should be having a committee to look at this. Maybe we should do our formation committee to look at it. And I think some of the things that you're saying, Don, make sense. But I think it should be done in the right process. It shouldn't just be done because, let's do it today because we got town council to give us an opinion that says we have to. It should be done because here's what we want to do, and this is why here's the problems we have, this is what we want to do, and here's why we want to do it, and here's how we're going to analyze it, and here's how we're going to solve it. And I think this was more it seems like more of a, so we do a lot of things by, what's the word, like not by design. So we're acting on, reactive, thank you. Yeah, we're not proactive. And this was another reactive that has forced us to have this meeting and be reactive. And I think that there's, anyway.
Matt, do you think there's a way to do, just to throw this out there for discussion, is we need to figure out how fast we can get if we want to sign advisory council back up and running, and also do a formation committee or something like that? Can we do both?
I think we could, but I think the sign committee could be up tomorrow. Libby could just say, you know what, we've been operating it for 20 years, put it back and we'll sort this out and make it legal. We'll sort it out in a way, we'll have a committee, we'll make it right. I just think, it was disbanded in a way that wasn't allowed. And we're not arguing about that. It was the HD, if it's disbanded, the HDC should have disbanded it. In my opinion, if they formed it, they should have disbanded it, in my opinion. And I think that we sort of, anyway.
Erica, do you want to?
I just wanted to note that if there's, obviously with the town manager not being present tonight, if there's specific questions, we do have town council online. If he, if there's specific questions that you want answered about any of this.
Sure. Brooke?
Yeah, the questions I would have is, can we tonight vote to reform any of these effective immediately? And we have an appointments policy for the select board that is weeks long. Can we vote to bypass that and reappoint the people who are currently serving on whichever one or ones of these if we were able to reconstitute them today, could we just blanket reappoint the people who are already serving as an exception to our appointments policy? Those would be my 2 questions.
John, can you answer that?
Yes. Good evening, everyone. This is obviously an unusual circumstance, but I don't see any reason why the select board could not simply vote to reestablish the sign advisory committee, and you could do that this evening. And furthermore, if you wanted to appoint those people who were serving on that committee, then this committee could be up and running tomorrow, if that's what you want to do.
So John, there's no legal issues to do that.
I don't think so, Jason, no.
So just to dig in a little deeper, and I'm okay, whatever we end up, whatever direction we go tonight. If select board is doing that, can we do that with how is it any different than any other committee? We have this very thorough process now. Why is it different? Because it was already existing?
I think yes, Jason, I think this is an unusual circumstance. This is an advisory committee. And I think if the concern is that this committee needs to continue its work uninterrupted, I think the select board has the discretion to reconstitute that committee and just reappoint the members. I believe there are 5 seats on the sign advisory committee, if I understand it correctly.
Yes.
And 1 seat expires in 23, 2 seats expire in 24, and 2 seats expire in 2025. I think under these circumstances, the board has the discretion, if you want, to simply reconstitute that committee tonight.
Erica?
I just wanted to note 2 things. One, your committee appointment policy is a policy of the board. It's nothing to do with the HDC Special Act. So you could alter from your policy, I think, as you so choose. And number 2, I lost my train of thought.
It'll come back to you.
Yes, it will. The terms that Mr. Giorgio just reviewed, those are proposed terms that I put in the packet, just because when I noted some of the terms that were sent to me via email, there were like 3 seats that were expired last year and 2 seats that were expiring in 2023. So just my proposal was 1 seat for 23, 2 for 24, 2 for 25, just to get them back on a better renewal schedule. To be more in line with the rest of the committees that the board approves.
A couple that had 6 people, so there was.
Yeah, if you decide to do those, there, yeah. And again, that the list at the end of the packet, that was my doing. It was just a suggestion to you as a proposal.
So one option, we could reinstate it as of tomorrow. And then what would happen in the next June reappointment season? Then it would go through the process?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It would just go through like your annual approvals, your annual committee process.
But why would it go through that in June when it's not doing it now? So it seems like we're playing both sides.
Well, I think I think that's the policy decision on your behalf, because the goal is to get this up and running as soon as possible. We also bypassed the policy last year when there was a vacancy on the planning board, and we didn't, even though we had the policy in place, timing was of the essence. So I think it's up to you to decide if timing is of the essence to get this committee back up and running as soon as possible. It's up to you to be able to bypass your policy in this situation, just to get it reestablished with the existing members. And then from this point on, it would follow the normal committee appointment process.
Brooke?
So through you to town council, I was reading through the information that we got from you. The sign advisory council seems to be different from the others in terms of our ability to reconstitute immediately. Did I read that correctly, John, or?
Brooke, I don't think so. When I was asked this question, it was specifically in regard to the sign advisory council. But as this evolved, I think the other advisory committees were identified. But my analysis would be the same for all of them in that as an advisory committee under the town charter, the select board is the appointing authority, votes to establish those committees and is the appointing authority.
Okay, thanks. And,
Okay, yeah.
and my other question is maybe through you to the planning director in terms of what, if we don't reconstitute them, what is the net or the effect on pending applications in particular that are sort of have been with these advisory councils? And also, I get the sense there's concern about staff time and availability to support these groups. And I just, if you wouldn't mind commenting on that.
Thank you for the question, Brooke. Before we get there, though, I would like to just respond to some of the things that were said.
Sure.
Because I really think the record needs to be set straight here. I consulted with the chair of the HDC over a year ago. We had a staff meeting with many of the staff members here, but there was a problem with these particular committees, and we had to look into it. I also consulted with the town manager throughout this whole process. So the representation that somehow I did this without consulting is completely false. And I want that on the record as we move forward. I did not take this action until I received the opinion from town council, which said that they shouldn't meet until this is legally corrected. So that's why we're here tonight, to get it legally corrected. I'm not going to be in a position to put committees together, to put agenda items together when there is no legal authority to move forward. And that's basically what I asked of the chair of the HDC, and that's what I asked of the town manager. So, and I'm happy that we're moving forward with this. The sign committee from my own staff and from others has been an important group. There were some unfortunate things happening at that sign committee. If you actually reviewed all of the emails, and those were provided to the town manager and to the town council about direct communication between sign committee members and applicants. So that did, and that's referenced in what I said to the chairman. So with the sign committee, in the absence of the sign committee, we've had, I think, 3 or 4 applications where our staff person, Billy, who's here tonight, provided written reports to the HDC, and those were handled, as in a routine manner, as they always are. He's prepared to do that. He's offered to reach out to the individual members and continue that service. If you'd rather reconstitute the sign committee, he would work with them. And again, I think be a good resource to move that forward. I would caution you, especially when I heard from you, Brooke, about all kinds of new neighborhood committees, because there's a staff burden here doing all that. Yeah. I would rather have the staff time not servicing a number of committees and have them work on the reporting and the advice directly to the HDC. And I think at least on the neighborhood level committees, I think there is a significant infrastructure of concerned citizens that can get together. They get together for the area plan process and other things and provide really good and helpful information. I don't know why that we can't rely on that to happen. And I do think Dawn's point about the historical commission, again, my staff thinks that that's a good use of their time to do the work that the Historic Advisory Board was doing. There's a crossover of members, I believe, some Mickey Rowland and Angus are on that committee as well. So again, they're on both committees, and now their time could be sort of focused through the historical commission process. So anyway, I think whatever you do to get that, the sign committee back, if that's your decision, that's fine. But somebody needed to take responsibility to reconstitute this board in a legal way. And I'm not going to be someone who gets an opinion from town council and says, oh, well, I'll just ignore that and and take a side trip around that. As a manager of Plus, that's not what I would do. And I ask you, would you do that? Thank you.
Erica, first.
Sorry, I just wanted to note too that you don't have to bypass your policy. If you want to reestablish the SAC tonight with the terms outlined in your packet and open it up for different candidates, you're welcome to do that as well. It'll take a little longer, but if there might be other people in the community that would like to serve on this council. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
This is where I would like to have HDC's input on this. And I don't want us to be in the political position of picking HDC, picking people for these committees. We have enough already. So I think that's I think it's, anyway, I'm kind of concerned about it becoming select board's responsibility. I think some of what we're dealing with is, there are some changes that could be made that could be positive, but the way we've gone about this wasn't positive. And would I ignore town council? I will if he's wrong. I did on the awning. He made a proposal to us. He made something to the town as though it was legal, but it was convoluted and it was against our what do you call it? The lease that was down there, completely against the lease. And so we did fix that and we moved on. So, so I think that there's times when, there are times when you're trying to be legal, you're going to do something more harmful. And I'm not sure that we've thought through what the right things are to do and what things we could, should be changing and why. And I would like the HDC involved with that. I think a lot of this, in my opinion, has come about because we don't have, a dedicated staff and we don't do the HDC the way we used to do it. And, I just think some of it, I think, is social, sort of people don't want to follow the rules maybe like they used to. But some of it, like when I did it, I told this story at the HDC, I put a sign up at the bagel company. The sign was wrong. Within an hour or two, someone showed up and told me. 2 days later, I put the right sign up and did it. There wasn't a big fight over it. It was just kind of what you did. And I think that somehow we need as a community to get back to that. And, and some of the emails didn't cover anyone in glory. Some of the emails that went back and forth, they were baiting sign committee members and they were saying bad things about each other. And it really was not very professional all the way around. And I think that that's, I don't think that that's how we should be doing business. So, so anyway, I'm trying to talk about it without talking, without saying the wrong thing or, doing something I shouldn't do. But we really, I think that we should get the HDC's opinion. I think they've asked in their meeting, they were talking about, having more autonomy and getting some of that back. We should let them speak for themselves.
Did you want to, Holly, it looked like you were getting ready to stand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Holly Backus, Preservation Planner. I know you all received a copy of Chairman Pohl's letter that went out this morning, but it's pretty clear in Chairman Pohl's way of stating things, and I just wanted to read one section. He said, although we value the input of all our advisory committees, the one that we simply cannot do without, even for the shortest of term, is the Sign Advisory Committee. Anyone who has reviewed our current agenda guidelines know that they are both extensive and thorough. It is simply not possible for the HDC to take on this review, particularly with a frenzied environment when our agenda roughly routines about 100 or more applications per week. So my point is, it's fairly clear. They understand if they could have one reconstituted, it would be the Sign Advisory Council. And I also just wanted to mention that, yes, things have changed. We are one of the busiest historic districts in the nation. And yes, we did have a different setup years ago, but we do have 3, actually 4, sometimes even 5 dedicated staff myself as preservation planner, our HDC compliance coordinator, 2 land use specialists, and other support staff. So there's quite a bit of staff that is here. Yes, it can be a lot of work, but we are here in support for the HDC. So thank you.
Thank you, Holly. We'll start throwing some other options that I'm hearing, just keep the conversation going. One option could be to wait and do nothing until we get more feedback from the HDC chair and the HDC in general. Second one could be after hearing Holly reading the chair of the HDC saying we would like to see the signed advisory council now or as soon as possible. So second option could be to reinstate that. In the summer, it would be a more formal process. And then if we decided to do a home rule petition, then we could hand that back over to the HDC once that was all done. In the meantime, we also could wait to hear from the HDC and other committees on what they think about the Historic Structures Advisory Committee. If they want to pull that into the Historic Commission and to just have more discussions. So I see some way forward tonight. Dawn?
I mean, I was going to suggest that we do reconstitute the sign advisory council tonight and that we do look for more input, because we might as well maybe proactively take this opportunity to figure out how things can be done better, since it's all come up. And I think that we should just appoint the sign advisory council until the next appointment. And that in terms of the membership, if this is okay, John, you can tell me if it is, that we get a recommendation from the HDC and we ratify it.
That would be fine.
Appropriate process, so that really they are still having the necessary input for the people who are advising them.
For the sign advisory council?
The choice of the membership is my point.
In June or now?
In June.
Okay.
No, now I think we should get
As
it
is.
done so that they can get back to work.
I'll second that, if that's a motion.
Okay, it is then.
Seconded, put them back.
Is there any more discussion?
No, I guess what I would say is that we note that we are, because it's an emergent situation, bypassing our normal appointment process for this on a temporary basis, just for the record.
Okay. Erica, did you have another
And
comment?
then it's the same members who were there. It's-
Yeah.
That was going to be my question.
It's
So
not new
you're
people.
reestablishing the committee with the existing members. What about the terms? Do you want to do the terms as recommended?
I was saying end the terms in June and start
All in
fresh
June, and then do
with
the
a
staggered?
recommendation from the HDC.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, Hillary, I'm going to get through this motion. Anything else? Okay. All those in favor of Don's motion?
I'd like to make a
Sorry, we're in the
comment.
middle of the motion. Sorry.
Aye.
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 I'd like public comment, I'd like to hear.
I won't allow. We can come back and make another motion after that. We're in the middle of the motion. We can't.
Right, then no, I'm against.
Okay, so it's 3-1. Go ahead, Hillary.
Yeah, I expected that there would be public comment, so I'll go ahead and make my public comment now. I wanted to listen to what everybody else had to say. So I think I am stunned by this whole discussion. I think that the most important part of Ray Pohl's letter, I haven't actually seen what came to the board. I heard what he read into the record last night, is that it is critical and very important to the HDC that they maintain the right to choose who advises them. So I appreciate, Dawn, what you said, which was basically that. I think it is critical with, and I suggest you might want to revisit the motion and the vote that you just took, because it is critical legally across the Commonwealth and in Nantucket that the historic district is distinct from the select board. And the historic district in Nantucket is elected. It's the only town that has an elected historic district. The select board does not have a right to appoint the historic district. And I think it is extremely confusing and irregular to go down a path where the select board is now appointing advisors to the historic district. And I think especially the way that it came about with I'm going to say this, it's going to sound provocative. I don't mean it that way, but a manufactured crisis to create a new precedent for the select board appointing advisors to the historic district. I think we had a management problem, and I think a lot of good questions got brought up. What are the criteria? What are the bylaws? The sign council has a regulation. It's very, very clear what they do, and they were formed under a regulation. The other advisory boards didn't. I think it's healthy and appropriate. I think that that's something that the people who oversee and support the staff for the historic district should work out with the historic district. So when I say a manufactured crisis, I've reviewed the initial opinion that was generated a year ago. You know, it's been circulating. I've sent it to the HDC. It didn't say that these boards should stop meeting. It just said that it's something you should, address. And that opinion was given at the request of the director of the department. So it really didn't say you need to disband these groups. The groups were disbanded without consultation with the HDC, and that was confirmed by the chair of the HDC in a meeting of the HDC. So it's very uncomfortable as someone who feels that their rights are protected by this historic district. The historic district was set up for the benefit and the protection of residents of Nantucket. So there's an obligation to maintain the historic district to protect the residents of Nantucket, and to feel that that historic district is maybe not being handled with the care that it should, and that a manufactured crisis is causing the premature and arbitrary disbandment of a functioning committee that had a management problem that should have been dealt with in a managerial way. It became a legal problem. Nobody's addressed the management problem. So I would prefer that one of the three of you who voted in the majority would recall the motion and consider amending the motion to allow the HDC to proceed as they were, with the expectation that they would come to you with a management suggestion coming from the HDC, which is independent, elected, and is the right people to solve this problem, not the select board. So that's what I would ask for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Hillary. Erica, can you just re-go over the motion again? I thought it was just to put in reinstate the SAC right now, but did we talk about June as well?
So this is my understanding. To reestablish the Sign Advisory Council tonight with the existing members, with all terms to end in June 2023. During that time, to get input from the HDC, and then at the June, kind of fix the terms and see what the HDC feedback is.
So I think we're all in agreement with reinstating the SAC right now. Just the second part, do we want to appoint HDC advisors? Right, with the recommendations.
The idea was that they would recommend the membership,
Right.
and we would just ratify it.
Until we can.
Unless there
maybe-
was a change to the charter, I think, or the act.
Special act.
The special act.
And then we can do a special act. So this would just be a temporary. I'm just
Yeah,
trying to-
well, if we want to go through that process, or we could just, if it's perfectly legal for us to they make the recommendation and we ratify it, it just seems like a easier path, but I'm fine either way.
Until we
Yeah.
hand it back over.
But I also, but it was also to get more information on the others before we made a final decision on sort of some reasons and ways that things could be done better, because I didn't realize that some of those committees had 6 people. That makes no sense, because if they're taking votes to make recommendations, it can't be an even number of people if they're not in agreement. And that, just that's one example. But can I just note one thing for the record, is that the HTC alternates are appointed by this board. So that precedent's kind of already set. And that was actually a change.
When you were on HGC, that happened?
No, at town meeting, right?
Yeah.
Brooke, and then we'll go to,
So I think I saw this as an emergency response to the request from the chair of the HDC to get the sign advisory council back up and running as quickly as possible. I don't see this as the permanent solution to this legal dilemma that I don't know that I completely understand. So I would like to fully evaluate the options. I don't think that there's any reason with what Hillary said not to leave the authority or get the authority for this under the HDC again, post this recommendation from town council that the current status is no good, but I would like to form a group of some kind, me and my work groups, to evaluate both where this belongs appropriately. And, my instinct is back with the HDC, and that's a longer, more onerous process. And then also to just look at the whole system that's been around for a really long time and deserves review, and do things belong with the historic commission instead of with a board? Is that duplicative? And reviewing this in full, and then hopefully we have an article at town meeting, and this gets up to the State House, and we keep the sign advisory council going until we get that process complete. But that would be the direction that I would want to head in, is to codify what is in the way that would conform.
thank you, Brooke. Hillary?
So thank you. Maybe what I might suggest is that it be added that that I don't know if you're delegating the right of appointment to the HDC, but that something that makes it clear that you're not you're not folding this in with your appointments. Now, to the point about the alternates, they're alternates. And, maybe that might, after due process of a study group and deciding to bring an article to town meeting, somebody might decide that's what is the best thing. But at this point, given that, there can be precedent, things can influence other decisions, I actually wonder, can't you just say, you know what, we're going to undo the decision and we're going to direct Plus to continue to support this? Because the committee has not been unappointed, right? I mean, the committee is still there. They're just not being supported. Committees are still meeting. They're just not being supported. And this, it's not like there's a regulation that's broken or that somebody is, these committees don't make any decisions on their own. So nobody could challenge the authority of a decision that they didn't make. The HDC continues to make the decisions. So I would like to see this board acknowledge that this was a manufactured crisis, that the opinion of town council, original opinion, did not order them to not be, this is something that should be addressed as a management issue for clarity and care of our historic district.
Can I ask one question of clarification? John, the way that motion was what we voted on, is the wording correct to that it's very clear that it's just ratified by us and we can't go another direction? Because there'll be a different board. There'll be two different members on here that coming June. So, we don't know the makeup. Is that worded correctly?
So the motion that was made and voted on reconstitutes the sign advisory committee with all of the existing members to serve until the next appointment season. I think the motion does not include any process for how future appointments are going to be made. I think that's something the board is going to have to address over the course of the next few months after consulting with the HDC. You can continue to appoint those members yourself, or you could certainly, under the charter, adopt a process where you request that the HDC make recommendations on those appointments and you simply ratify those appointments. But that's, I think, for a future discussion, Jason.
I thought that was
That
Don's
was part of
motion.
my motion, John,
The ratification part.
for this commit, this one committee, anyway.
Can you read it
That
again?
Not appropriate?
No, you can do that if that's what you want to do. I did not hear that in
It
the
was
motion.
for the appointment in June, because, I mean, realistically, even if we put in a change at town meeting where the HDC becomes the appointing authority, it's not going to be approved by June.
Okay.
So the motion is to
But it's
get
still-
HDC input and about how it should continue next year, how the appointment should happen, right?
And
And
you
then-
can invite the HDC to make recommendations on the appointments in June, which will be ratified by the select board. If
thought that was the
that's what
motion.
you
That was-
intend
that-
on.
That was the motion.
That was the motion, John.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fine.
So I just want to be clear that that's how it'll go. We'll just ratify it.
Yep.
For now, we might come back when we learn more in 2, 3, 4 weeks. We can amend it. I feel comfortable with that for now. Matt, and
Yeah,
then
I'm fine with, sort of getting them back up and running. What I'm struggling with a little bit is how are we going to learn more in 2 months? Like, who's going to do it? When are they going to do it? How are we going to do it? I get caught in that because there's so much going on, and then it's, so I that's where I sort of, I think there's been some good suggestions from staff. I think there's been some good suggestions here, but I feel like we're trying to do it on a Wednesday night in front of the camera, and that's very difficult to do. You should be getting the history, the why, the how, and here's what we're doing. That should be coming to us with that, and then and for us to evaluate. And that isn't what we're doing right now. We're winging it, and whenever we wing it, we mess up something.
I think we need HDC, the staff that supports the HDC, and the historical commission to kind of talk about how all of these things could function, and the neighborhood committees that are established. Just even like Tuckernuck, for example, it's its own island. We know the HDC members can't get out there to view stuff. Well, we've done it before, but it's not the norm, especially if it's the middle of the winter. But
Let them deal with themselves.
but there's a few different avenues for the different committees.
go ahead, and then we got to go to Bruce. He's been standing there for a while.
Yeah, I would say that it is my intention that we get, I guess the question is how do we direct staff, the HDC, and ask the HDC and to get the input from the members of all of, folks who have served historically on these groups as to what this framework should look like, to support the HDC's work in the way that the chair says has been valuable to them, being able to do their work in an efficient manner. And to do the assessment that we probably should have done, should have been done in the last year, as is often the case.
Yes.
But, one of my favorite expressions is the best time to plant a tree is today. The best time to plant a tree was yesterday. The second best time is today. So let's get on it.
Bruce?
Thank you, Bruce Mandel from Nantucket. Good evening, Select Board, staff, members of PLUS, and the public. I'm here to speak about how the disbanding of the Nantucket Advisory Board, of which I was a member, how it affects our community. We tried to serve as an ad hoc augmentation to the HDC staff in reviewing applications that applied just to Nantucket. And I'm here to speak about how I see the cards that are on the table right now, what's been presented to you folks, and how we're going to deal with it. And the whole process of reviewing the applications to the HDC is ongoing. Their agenda is 7 to 10 pages long with hundreds of applications, and it's not stopping while we figure out what we're going to do. And I'm not aware of any incidents of the Nantucket Advisory Board inappropriately or forcibly commenting or confusing an applicant with our comments. We've always tried to just address how we viewed how these applications are affecting our community, and the assertion that we made inappropriate comments or forcefully tried to influence other league decisions, it's rather disparaging and insulting to the hours of work that we as volunteers, unpaid volunteers, put in. Now, due to the disbanding of the Nantucket Advisory Board, we immediately met, and several community members, including former members of the advisory board, met and created a group to continue to review the applications and to make an aggregation of the comments and to have one person go to the HDC and present the comments, rather than be inundated by individual emails saying and repeating the same things. The Nantucket Conservation Association is comprised of about 450 to 500 members. It's an aggregation of the Long Pond Residents Association, the Tristram's Landing Residents Association, the Nantucket Residents Association, the Smiths Point Residents Association. The board of the Nantucket Conservation Association met yesterday, and they passed a unanimous motion to support the efforts of this independent group of neighbors who are willing to meet and review the applications to speak on behalf of the Nantucket neighborhoods at the HDC. It's an arduous task without staff to pick through those 10 pages and to pick out the Nantucket applications, download them, print them, and distribute them. The applications are being processed. We're seeing them. They're incomplete. They're inaccurate. They have errors. And that's just not the Nantucket applications. These are all of these applications that get processed to the HDC. It'd speed things up if they were reviewed properly, rejected, go fix this, put dimensions on the drawings, put the heights of the buildings on the drawings, rather than having our committee review it, mention it to the HDC, them discuss it and try to fix it. Now, as I look through the packet that we got to see today, I see that there are carefully drawn options for you to consider as to how to deal with this. I think there were 5 or 6 of them presented. I would like to suggest that the composition of the proposed groups, and let me specifically just talk, it's a 1-page document. It says HDC Advisory Board, proposed terms, seats, terms, and it lists the Sign Advisory Council, Sconset, Tuckernuck, Nantucket, and Historic Structures. I'm just going to speak to the Nantucket Advisory Board. My suggestion is that in addition to these seats that are proposed, we are allowed to have 2 alternates that could help us fill in the absence of a seated member in the event we want to review these things and have a full committee. And I'd like to suggest that when we select these members, that the members of the Nantucket Advisory Board at least all live in the community. That's important to us. and I just want to close with my notes here. I would like to have you carefully consider how the decisions that you're making affect the individual neighborhoods on the island. We are very concerned about this issue. And we want to continue as a neighborhood to have meaningful input into the HDC review process. And, we're especially considering the need for additional HDC staff to review these hundreds of applications. And I would like you to please carefully consider how you address either rescinding the disbandment or how you consider how this disbanding might be modified so that we can continue to have meaningful input. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bruce. Andrew?
Mr. Chairman and board members, I want to respond a little bit to the statement about manufactured crisis. And this is from this is in Mr. Giorgio's August 17th memo to me, the last sentence. Until such time as the advisory committees are legally reconstituted, which may or may not occur, they should discontinue any meetings or deliberations. So this is the document that led to that particular decision. So I just, all of this is in material that has been provided to you. So thank you.
Thank you, Andrew.
Hi, the opinion was originally generated in June of 2021 in response to advisory boards. And then it was brought back up on August 5th of 2021. And it's silly to be discussing this because it's all in black and white. It did not include disband the advisory boards. It says, my recommendation, well, I'm not going to read it to you. The language isn't in there. And it was added at the request of the planning director. So I think you guys have come to a good conclusion. I appreciate your letting me speak after you made your motion. I appreciate that you care deeply about the historic district and understand that this is not something that should be, just made on the fly. But I also just had to say that I'm reading documents that are actual documents and I'm not making up what I said.
Thank you, Hillary. From the back row.
Back row. Hi. Unfortunately, I'm Jeremy Bloomer. I came 5 minutes late and I was here for the finance committee, so I didn't know what you guys did or didn't do. And I was curious.
We didn't do anything. That's September 21st, right?
Yeah, tonight and next week was just reading of the names of the applicants. And then on the 21st, you'll be able to review your application again before the board and they'll make a decision then.
Gotcha.
Would you like to weigh in on HCC?
Unless you want to apply for a board, HGC board.
Yeah, no. I have a house built in 1800. I'm happy with it. It's no problem. So we're fine.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for coming.
Okay. So you have a motion made.
Yep. Is there?
Passed 3-1.
Yes.
Yeah, passed.
Yeah.
It feels clear to me. It feels clear to me what
direction
we did.
Yep.
So, and then I think the second question is, how do we advance a process for review of the advisory councils, where they should, under whose authority they should exist, and how we make that happen? So that's, as a new select board member, how do we, is there something we should be doing to make that happen?
If it's a warrant article related, we only have 3 months to get in. So we have to start now getting feedback from plus HGC, the committees.
Why don't, Libby's not here, so why don't we discuss it with the town manager next week at the agenda meeting?
Sure. Then we'll come back.
and bring it back. And I think we should be going to them and asking for input.
Yes.
I think that's what,
Agreed.
yeah, I
Definitely.
think that's what everybody's saying. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
Do you want to get a motion to continue that appeal before? We
Yes,
do
we have to
committee
do
reports?
that. I was going to do committee reports next.
Okay.
Any committee reports?
No, actually.
All right. HTC appeal. Is there,
Motion to continue to December 7th.
Second.
all's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That passes 4-0. Motion to adjourn?
Do we need to open the public hearing and then continue it?
The public hearing was, I think, technically still open.
Oh, okay.
So-
Because it already been continued.
Yep,
right.
it had already been continued, so just needed the motion to continue.
Okay, so I will move to adjourn.
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Somebody's gonna do that to Melissa?